The warning. The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched out like a vast metal ocean. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy sat in curved rows that spiraled upward toward the ceiling. The air hummed with translation devices working overtime, turning alien words into meaning that every species could understand. Ambassador Kethvar stood at the center podium, his blue scales gleaming under the bright lights. He was tall even for a Zaphirian with sharp teeth that showed when he smiled. His confidence filled the room like thick smoke. Honored council members, Kethvar began, his voice carrying easily through the massive space. Today I bring you an opportunity, a chance for the Zaphirian Empire to expand our borders and bring order to a chaotic sector of space. On the giant screens around the hall, images appeared, a small blue and green world spinning slowly in the darkness. White clouds swirled across its surface like cotton candy. This is Earth, Kethvar continued, home to a species that calls itself human. They have barely learned to travel between stars. Their technology is primitive. Their military is weak. They fight among themselves constantly, wasting resources on petty conflicts. Murmurs of approval rippled through the audience. Many species nodded their heads or made sounds of agreement. The humans looked easy to defeat. The sector they occupy contains 17 habitable worlds and rich asteroid fields, Kethvar said, resources that could benefit all council members. The Zaphirian Empire requests permission to pacify this region and bring these worlds under proper galactic governance. More approval from the crowd. Several ambassadors were already discussing trade agreements for the resources Kethvar promised. But in the highest tier of seats, something stirred. Elder Vositai had been sitting so still that many forgot she was there. The Arconian was ancient even by her species' long standards. Her skin looked like old leather, marked with scars from wars fought before most species in the room had discovered fire. When she stood, her movements were slow but steady. The hall fell silent. Even the translation devices seemed to whisper more quietly. I must speak against this proposal, Vostai said. Her voice was soft, but it carried clearly through the sudden quiet. Kethvar's smile faltered. Elder Vositai, surely you cannot object to bringing order to such a backward region? I object because I know what humans are, she replied, and what they do to those who threaten them. Nervous laughter came from some of the younger species. The humans were barely beyond their own solar system. What threat could they possibly pose to civilizations that had ruled space for thousands of years? Vositai's old eyes swept across the assembly. How many of you remember the hegemony of Talnash? Silence. A few older ambassadors shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They controlled 47 star systems, Vostai continued. Their war fleet numbered in the thousands. They were proud, strong, and absolutely certain of their superiority. They encountered humans 300 years ago. Within 2 years, the Talnash were gone. Not defeated. Not conquered, gone as if they had never existed. Ridiculous, Kethvar scoffed. There's no record of such a civilization. Exactly, Vostai said quietly. The word hung in the air like a bad smell. Several ambassadors looked at each other with worried expressions. What about the Crimson Fleet? Vostai asked. Surely some of you remember the greatest pirates in galactic history. They raided shipping lanes for centuries. Then they attacked a human colony ship. 6 months later, every pirate base was empty. Every ship was found drifting in space with no crew aboard. Space pirates disappear all the time, another ambassador called out. That proves nothing. The Void Hunters, then, Vositai pressed. A nomadic warrior culture that traveled the outer rim. They were famous for their brutality. They enslaved entire populations. They attacked human settlements 50 years ago. She paused. When was the last time anyone saw a Void Hunter ship? The silence stretched longer this time. A few ambassadors were quietly checking their databases, searching for records that suddenly seemed hard to find. These are coincidences, Kethvar insisted, but his voice had lost some of its confidence. Old wars and failed civilizations. It happens all the time in space. My people keep long records, Vostai said. We have been watching the galaxy for thousands of years. We have seen patterns that others miss. Every aggressive civilization that attacks humans eventually disappears. Not immediately, not obviously, but completely. Then why haven't the humans conquered the galaxy? A young Talarian ambassador demanded. If they're so dangerous, why do they stay in their small corner of space? Vositai's expression grew even more serious. Because they choose to. The most dangerous predator is the one that only hunts when threatened. "This is nonsense," Kethavar said, his voice rising. "You're asking us to fear a species that hasn't even colonized a dozen worlds. Look at the evidence." New images appeared on the screens. Human cities with their simple architecture. Human ships that looked crude compared to sleek Zaphirian designs. Human military forces that seemed small and poorly equipped. "They have no unified government," Kethavar pointed out. "They fight constant wars among themselves. Their weapons are primitive. Their ships are slow. This is not a species to fear. This is a species that needs proper guidance." Many ambassadors nodded again. The evidence seemed clear. Humans looked weak, but Vostai wasn't finished. "My people made contact with humans once, many centuries ago. It was peaceful contact. We offered trade, knowledge, friendship. Do you know what they asked us?" She waited, but no one answered. "They asked us about every aggressive species we had ever encountered. They wanted to know their tactics, their technology, their weaknesses. We thought it was simple curiosity. We shared our knowledge freely." Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper. 6 months later, every aggressive species we had told them about was gone. The hall erupted in noise. Ambassadors argued with each other in dozens of languages. Some demanded proof. Others called for investigations. A few quietly began calculating the distance between human space and their own worlds. Kethavar raised his voice above the chaos. "Even if these wild stories were true, it changes nothing. The Zaphirian Empire is not some primitive raider fleet. We have the finest military in this sector. Our technology is advanced. Our strategies are proven. We will succeed where others failed." "Others have said the same thing," Vostai replied sadly. "Enough," the council speaker declared, bringing order back to the hall. "We have heard the arguments. All those in favor of granting the Zaphirian Empire permission to pacify the human sector?" Hands, claws, tentacles, and other appendages rose across the hall. The count wasn't even close. "The motion passes," the speaker announced. "Ambassador Kethavar, you have the council's permission to proceed." Kethavar's smile returned, sharper than before. "Thank you, honored council. The Zaphirian Empire will bring peace to this troubled region." As the assembly began to break up, Vostai made her way slowly toward the exit. Several ambassadors approached her, asking quiet questions about her stories. She answered them patiently, but her expression remained grave. "Elder," one young diplomat asked, "if humans are so dangerous, why didn't you try harder to stop this?" Vostai paused at the great doors of the hall. "Because some lessons can only be learned through experience, and because the galaxy has forgotten what happens when sleeping giants are awakened." She left the hall in silence, while behind her, Kethavar celebrated with his supporters and made plans for conquest. The vote was cast. The decision was made. In distant space, a small blue world continued its slow spin around a yellow star, its inhabitants unaware that their fate had been decided by beings they had never met. The warning had been given. It had been ignored. Soon the galaxy would remember why some warnings should always be heeded. First contact gone wrong. 3 weeks after the council vote, Admiral Kethavar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Sovereign's Pride. Through the massive viewing window, he could see his battle fleet spread out in perfect formation. 200 ships of various sizes, all bearing the blue and silver colors of the Zaphirian Empire. It was the largest force he had ever commanded. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "we are entering the human solar system." "No resistance detected," Kethavar nodded with satisfaction. The journey from Zaphirian space had taken longer than expected, but they had finally arrived. Ahead of them, a yellow star grew brighter, surrounded by several small worlds. "What do our scouts report?" Kethavar asked. "Minimal military presence, sir," the tactical officer replied. "A few small patrol ships near the outer planets. Some orbital stations around the third and fourth worlds. Nothing that poses any threat to the fleet. And the humans themselves? Approximately 8 billion on the main world they call Earth. Smaller populations on the fourth planet, Mars, and various moons and stations. They appear to be continuing their normal activities. No signs of panic or military preparation." Kethavar allowed himself a small smile. Just as he had told the council, humans were unprepared for real warfare. They probably didn't even understand what was coming. "Open a communication channel to all human receivers," he ordered. The communications officer worked quickly at his console. "Channel open, Admiral." Kethavar straightened his uniform and stepped forward. This moment would be recorded in history. as the beginning of human integration into galactic civilization. People of Earth and the human colonies, he began, his voice carrying authority and confidence. I am Admiral Kethvar of the Zaphirian Empire. By order of the Galactic Council, this system is now under Imperial protection. You have 1 standard hour to surrender unconditionally. Any resistance will be met with overwhelming force. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. Comply, and your people will be treated with the mercy befitting a primitive species. Resist and face the consequences of defying galactic law. The transmission ended. Now came the waiting. Kethvar had delivered similar ultimatums to dozens of worlds over his career. Most surrendered immediately. A few tried to negotiate. None had ever truly resisted. 20 minutes later, his communications officer looked up from his station. Admiral, we're receiving a response. Put it on screen. The main display flickered to life, showing a middle-aged human male in a simple dark uniform. Behind him, Kethvar could see what appeared to be a modest command center. The human looked calm, almost relaxed. Admiral Kethvar, the human said politely, I am Ambassador Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. We have received your ultimatum. Then you are prepared to surrender? Kethvar asked. I'm afraid not, Chen replied with the same polite tone. We must respectfully decline your offer of protection. However, we would be happy to discuss peaceful trade relations or cultural exchange. Kethvar blinked in surprise. You are refusing to surrender? We are, Chen confirmed. Earth and all human colonies will remain independent. We suggest you withdraw your fleet and return to your own space. This doesn't have to end badly for anyone. You dare threaten me? Kethvar's voice rose with anger. Do you have any idea what you're facing? I command 200 of the finest warships in the galaxy. You have what, a few dozen patrol boats? Numbers aren't everything, Admiral, Chen said quietly. Please reconsider. Take your ships and leave while you still can. The transmission ended. The human had cut the connection. Silence filled the bridge. Every officer stared at the blank screen. In all of Kethvar's experience, no primitive species had ever responded with such casual dismissal of superior force. Sir? The tactical officer said hesitantly. What are your orders? Kethvar's shock turned to rage. How dare these backward primitives dismiss him so casually? How dare they suggest he retreat? The insult burned in his mind like acid. Target the human colony on the 4th planet, he ordered. Full orbital bombardment. Show them what happens to those who defy the Empire. Sir, there are civilians. I said target the colony, Kethvar snarled. Make it a demonstration they won't forget. The fleet turned toward Mars, where a small human settlement had been established in recent decades. The bombardment began within the hour. Kethvar watched with grim satisfaction as energy beams lanced down from orbit, turning buildings to dust and melting metal installations. The human response was swift but futile. A handful of small ships rose from the planet's surface, firing primitive missiles and energy weapons at the Zaphirian fleet. The attacks barely scratched the Imperial ship's shields. Within minutes, every human vessel was destroyed. The colony fell silent. Open another channel to Earth, Kethvar commanded. This time, Ambassador Chen looked different. His calm expression had been replaced by something harder, colder. Behind him, other humans moved with urgent purpose. You have made a grave mistake, Admiral, Chen said, his voice like winter wind. Have I? Kethvar laughed. Your Mars colony is ash. Your ships are scrap metal. I'm offering you one final chance to surrender before I do the same to Earth. There will be no surrender, Chen replied. You came here believing we were weak and helpless. You were wrong. You've killed innocent people to make a point. That was your mistake. My mistake? Kethvar couldn't believe what he was hearing. You're the one refusing to face reality. You cannot win this fight. Chen's expression grew even colder. Admiral, I want you to understand something. You are no longer conducting a military operation. You are now prey. Every ship you brought into our space, every soldier under your command, every piece of technology you possess, all of it now belongs to us. You're insane, Kethvar snapped. You should have listened to Elder Vostai, Chen said quietly. She tried to warn you, but warnings only work if people are wise enough to heed them. The transmission ended again, but this time Chen's final words echoed in Kethvar's mind. How did the human know about Vostai's warning? How did he even know it had happened? Admiral? His sensor officer called out, voice tight with concern. I'm detecting some anomalous readings. What kind of readings? Unknown energy signatures at the edge of our formation. And sir, we seem to have lost contact with 3 of our scout ships. Kethavar moved to the sensor station. The displays showed his fleet in perfect formation, except for 3 small gaps where scout vessels should have been. What happened to them? Unknown, sir. They were there on the last sweep. Now they're just gone. No distress calls, no debris, no energy signatures from weapons fire. A chill ran down Kethavar's spine. Ships didn't just disappear in space. There was always some trace, some evidence of what had happened. Send out additional scouts, he ordered. Double the sensor sweeps. I want to know what's out there. But even as he gave the orders, Kethavar felt something he hadn't experienced in decades of warfare. For the first time since arriving in human space, he was afraid. Behind the formation, in the darkness between stars, something moved. Something that had been watching, waiting, learning. The hunt had begun, and Admiral Kethavar was starting to realize that his fleet might not be the predators in this system. They might be the prey. The hunt begins. 2 days had passed since the destruction of the Mars colony. Admiral Kethavar paced the bridge of his flagship like a caged animal. What should have been a simple conquest was turning into a nightmare. Report, he demanded from his tactical officer. We've lost 18 ships, sir, came the grim reply. All from the outer edge of our formation. No distress signals, no weapons fire detected, no debris fields. They just vanish. Kethavar stared at the tactical display. Red X mark showed where his ships had been. Now there were only empty spaces and the nervous movements of the remaining vessels trying to stay close to the main fleet. What about Earth? He asked. No response to any of our communications, sir. The planet appears to be continuing normal operations. No military buildup, no evacuation attempts. It's as if they're ignoring us completely. That was perhaps the most unsettling part. After the bombardment of Mars, Kethavar had expected panic, desperate negotiations, or at least some kind of response. Instead, Earth remained silent. Its cities continued to glow at night. Its ships moved on regular schedules. The humans acted as if a massive war fleet wasn't hovering at the edge of their system. Sir, the communications officer interrupted. We're receiving a transmission from the destroyer Swift Strike. Put it through. The screen flickered to life, showing Captain Yeltar's face. The young officer looked terrified. Admiral, we found something. You need to see this. What is it, Captain? We located the Night Hunter, sir. One of the scouts that went missing yesterday. Kethavar felt a moment of relief. At least one ship hadn't simply vanished. Are there survivors? The ship is intact, Admiral, but... Yeltar's voice trailed off. Sir, you need to see the security footage. A new window opened on the screen. It showed the interior of a Zaphirian ship's main corridor. Everything looked normal at first. Then shadows began moving wrong. The camera jerked as something struck it and the image cut to static. That's not much to go on, Kethavar said. There's more, sir, from multiple cameras throughout the ship. The footage continued. Corridor after corridor showed the same thing. Normal operations, then something moving in the shadows, then silence. But in one clip, Kethavar caught a glimpse of something that made his blood freeze. A human. Not in a spacesuit or combat armor, but in simple dark clothing. Moving through a Zaphirian ship as if it were his natural environment? How is that possible? Kethavar whispered. How did they get aboard? We don't know, sir. But there's something else. The ship's computer systems were accessed. Someone downloaded our entire tactical database, ship specifications, fleet positions, everything. Kethavar felt the deck seem to shift under his feet. Are you telling me humans somehow boarded one of our ships in the middle of space, stole our military secrets, and left without a trace? Yes, sir. That's exactly what I'm telling you. The transmission ended, leaving Kethavar staring at his reflection in the dark screen. This was impossible. Ships didn't board other ships in deep space without being detected. Humans didn't have that kind of technology. Admiral, his sensor officer called out, voice tight with panic. The Swift Strike just went dark. What do you mean, dark? All communications lost, sir. The ship is still there on sensors, but it's not responding to any calls. Kethavar watched as another red X appeared on his tactical display. 19 ships lost, in 2 days. Without firing a single shot in return. Pull the fleet into tight formation, he ordered. No ship operates alone. Everything stays within visual range of at least 2 other vessels. Sir, his intelligence officer spoke up hesitantly. I've been analyzing the pattern of our losses. What pattern? The ships that have vanished were all collecting specific types of data. Communications intercepts, sensor sweeps, tactical analyses. It's as if someone is systematically stealing our intelligence capabilities. The words hit Kethvar like a physical blow. You're saying they're not just destroying our ships. They're studying us. That's exactly what I'm saying, sir. Kethvar moved to the main viewing window, staring out at the stars. Somewhere in that darkness, humans were moving like ghosts, taking apart his fleet piece by piece. But how? Their technology was primitive. Their ships were slow and clumsy. Yet somehow they were accomplishing what should have been impossible. Sir? The communications officer interrupted his thoughts. We're receiving a transmission. Source unknown. Put it through. The screen lit up again, but this time it wasn't Ambassador Chen. It was a different human, wearing what appeared to be simple workers' clothing. Behind him, Kethvar could see what looked like the interior of a cargo ship. Admiral Kethvar, the human said pleasantly. My name is Marcus. I wanted to thank you. Thank me for what? For bringing us such wonderful gifts. These Zaphirian ships are really well built. The technology is fascinating. We're learning so much. Kethavar's mouth went dry. What are you talking about? Your fleet, Admiral. Every ship you brought into our system is a treasure trove of information. Advanced engines, weapon systems, shield generators, computers. We're reverse engineering everything as fast as we can take it apart. You're lying. You can't possibly— Oh, but we can, Marcus interrupted, his pleasant tone never changing. Humans are very good at taking things apart and figuring out how they work. We've had lots of practice. The camera pulled back, revealing more of the space behind Marcus. Kethvar's vision blurred as he recognized Zaphirian technology scattered across work tables. Pieces of ships, computer cores, weapon components, all being carefully dismantled by humans in simple work clothes. The interesting thing, Marcus continued, is how similar your technology is to other species we've encountered. The Talnash used very similar shield configurations. The Crimson Fleet had almost identical engine designs. It's like you all attend the same military academy. That's impossible, Kethvar whispered. Those civilizations were destroyed centuries ago. Were they? Marcus asked with what might have been genuine curiosity. Or did they just go somewhere else? The transmission ended. Kethvar stood frozen, his mind racing. The implications of what he'd just heard were staggering. If humans had been studying alien technology for centuries, if they had access to the military secrets of civilizations the galaxy had forgotten, Admiral, his tactical officer reported, voice barely above a whisper. We just lost 3 more ships, all at the same time. Which ones? The Iron Fist, the Star Cutter, and the Void Piercer. All cruiser class. All heavily armed. Kethvar looked at the tactical display. 22 ships gone. His mighty fleet was being dismantled like a broken machine, and he still hadn't seen a single human warship. Sir, the sensor officer added, I'm detecting movement in the asteroid belt. Something big. Show me. The main screen shifted to display the rocky debris field that orbited between the 4th and 5th planets. At first, Kethvar saw nothing unusual. Then the computer highlighted movement and his breath caught in his throat. What he had taken for asteroids were moving, slowly, carefully, but definitely moving, and they were moving toward his fleet. Those aren't asteroids, he said quietly. No, sir, the sensor officer confirmed. They're ships, camouflaged to look like space debris. I count at least 50 contacts, possibly more. Kethvar finally understood. The humans hadn't been hiding. They had been hunting. Every moment his fleet had spent in this system, they had been surrounded by predators disguised as harmless rocks and metal. Battle stations, he ordered, but his voice lacked its usual confidence. All ships prepare for combat. The hunt was about to become a battle. But as Admiral Kethvar watched the disguised human ships emerge from their hiding places like wolves from a dark forest, he began to suspect that the battle had been over before it started. His fleet had sailed into a trap, and now the trap was closing. The trap unfolds. All ships retreat to the edge of the system. Admiral Kethvar ordered, his voice cracking with strain. Maximum speed. Do not engage the enemy. The remains of his once mighty fleet began to turn away from Earth, engines glowing as they pushed toward escape velocity. What had started as 200 proud warships was now less than half that number. Ships continued to vanish even as they fled, picked off by unseen hunters. Sir, his navigation officer reported, we have a problem. Kethvar didn't want to hear any more problems, but he had no choice. What now? The hyperspace jump points are blocked. All of them. Blocked by what? The main screen shifted to show the system's edge, where the gravitational fields allowed ships to enter faster than light travel. What Kethvar saw made his heart sink even further. Massive structures floated in the darkness, positioned exactly where his ships needed to go to escape. They looked like space stations, but wrong somehow. Too angular, too sharp, like metal spiders waiting in their webs. How long have those been there? He demanded. Unknown, sir. They could have been positioned years ago. They're running silent, using the background radiation of space to hide their energy signatures. Kethvar stared at the tactical display. Every escape route was blocked. The asteroid field behind them crawled with disguised human ships, and somewhere in the darkness, more of his vessels continued to disappear. It's a trap, he said quietly. The entire system is a trap. Sir, his communications officer interrupted. Incoming transmission from Earth. Ambassador Chen appeared on the screen again. Behind him, Kethvar could see the same calm command center as before, but now he noticed details he had missed. The walls were covered with displays showing Zaphirian ship movements. Human technicians worked at stations built around captured alien technology. Admiral, Chen said politely, you seem to be having trouble leaving our system. You planned this, Kethvar accused. All of it. The weak response, the scattered defenses, everything was designed to lure us in. Of course, Chen replied. Did you think we would let an invasion fleet approach Earth without preparation? We've been watching your empire for months, Admiral. We know your tactics, your technology, your weaknesses. This is impossible. Your species has barely achieved faster than light travel. Chen smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. That's what we wanted you to think. It's amazing how much easier it is to gather intelligence when people believe you're primitive. The screen split, showing multiple views. Kethvar saw the interior of what appeared to be a massive hidden facility. Humans worked alongside technology he didn't recognize, but some pieces looked familiar. Zaphirian computer cores, Telnash shield generators, Crimson Fleet weapon systems. Welcome to Luna Base, Chen explained. Hidden on the dark side of Earth's moon. We've been building this facility for 3 centuries, ever since we learned that the galaxy wasn't as friendly as we hoped. 3 centuries, Kethvar whispered. But your first contact with the galactic community was only 50 years ago. Our first official contact, Chen corrected. We've been watching the galaxy much longer than that, learning, preparing. Every aggressive species that disappeared over the centuries, they didn't vanish, Admiral. They were harvested. The word sent ice through Kethvar's veins. Harvested? Their technology, their tactics, their knowledge, all carefully preserved and studied. Do you know how many different ways there are to build a warship, Admiral? We do. We've taken apart examples from 47 different species. New images appeared on the screen. A vast storage facility filled with alien spacecraft in various stages of disassembly. Humans in work clothes moved between them like technicians in a repair shop. The hegemony of Telnash thought they could conquer a human farming colony, Chen continued. Instead, they taught us about energy shields and gravity manipulation. The Crimson Fleet showed us how to build ships that could hide in asteroid fields. The Void Hunters demonstrated advanced boarding techniques. You're monsters, Kethvar breathed. We're survivors, Chen replied coldly, and we're very good students. Every species that attacked us made us stronger. Every war fleet that entered our space became a learning opportunity. The tactical display updated, showing the true scope of the trap. What Kethvar had thought were empty regions of space were actually filled with hidden installations. The entire solar system was a weapon aimed at any force foolish enough to threaten humanity. Sir, his weapons officer called out, the human ships are moving into attack formation. On the screen, Chen checked something off camera. Admiral, you're about to experience something very few beings have survived. A human military response to an unprovoked attack on civilian targets. We can still negotiate, Kethvar said desperately. There's no need for more bloodshed. You're right, Chen agreed. There isn't. Surrender your ships and crews for processing, and this can end quickly. Processing. Technology analysis, tactical interrogation, cultural study. Standard procedure for aggressive species. Most of your people will be returned to Zaphirian space eventually, with appropriate modifications to prevent future hostile actions. Kethvar felt his world crumbling around him. You're talking about brainwashing. We prefer to call it attitude adjustment. The galaxy is a dangerous place, Admiral. We've learned that the hard way. Our job is to make it safer for peaceful species. The human ships were closing in now. Not the primitive vessels Kethvar had expected, but sleek predators that moved through space like living things. Their hulls were covered in adaptive camouflage that shifted to match the surrounding starfield. Their weapons were unlike anything in the galactic databases. Last chance, Admiral, Chen said. Surrender now and your crews will be treated according to galactic law. Continue to resist and we'll be forced to use more aggressive collection methods. Kethvar looked around his bridge. His officers stared at him with expressions of fear and desperation. They were soldiers trained for battle, but this wasn't battle. This was extermination. You said peaceful species, Kethvar said quietly. What happens to aggressive ones? Chen's expression didn't change. They stopped being aggressive. One way or another. The transmission ended. Admiral, his tactical officer reported. The human ships are targeting our engines. They're not trying to destroy us. They're trying to disable us. Kethvar understood. Dead Zaphirians couldn't provide information. Destroyed ships couldn't be studied. The humans wanted them alive and intact for processing. All ships, he ordered, his voice hollow. Prepare for boarding actions. Set weapons to maximum power and fight to the last soldier. It was a desperate order, but Admiral Kethvar had finally realized the truth. His fleet hadn't come to conquer a primitive species. They had flown into the web of the galaxy's most efficient predators. The humans weren't just defending their territory. They were farming it, and his ships were about to be harvested. The wrath unveiled. 6 months after the Zaphirian fleet had entered human space, the Galactic Council chamber fell silent as Elder Vostai approached the central podium. The ancient Arconian moved slowly, her weathered hands gripping a staff made from metal that gleamed like captured starlight. The massive hall was fuller than usual. Representatives from hundreds of species had come to hear what everyone hoped would be news about the Zaphirian Empire's successful pacification campaign. Trade agreements waited to be signed. Resources needed to be distributed. The galaxy expected good news, instead they got silence. Honored members, Vosatai began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast space. I come before you today to speak of the Zaphirian Empire. Murmurs of anticipation rippled through the audience. Several ambassadors leaned forward in their seats. The Zaphirian Empire no longer exists, she said simply. The words hit the assembly like a physical blow. Voices rose in confusion and disbelief. The speaker called for order, but it took several minutes for the noise to die down. What do you mean? Demanded Ambassador Raktul of the Hegemony States. Admiral Kethvar's fleet was the largest military force assembled in decades. They had superior numbers, superior technology. They had superior arrogance, Vostai interrupted. And now they are gone. Gone how? Another voice called out. Destroyed in battle? Forced to retreat? Gone, Vostai repeated. As if they never existed. She gestured to the great screens around the chamber. Star maps appeared, showing the region of space that had once belonged to the Zaphirian Empire. Where thriving worlds should have been marked, there were only empty systems. 47 star systems, Vostai continued. 12 billion Zaphirians, thousands of ships, stations, and colonies. All silent. All empty. That's impossible, Ambassador Raktul protested. You can't make an entire civilization disappear, can't you? Vosatai asked quietly. When was the last time anyone received a transmission from Zaphirian space? When did you last see a Zaphirian trader or diplomat? When did any of you last hear the name Kethvar spoken anywhere except in this chamber? The silence stretched longer this time. Several ambassadors were quietly checking their communication logs, searching for contacts that suddenly seemed absent. We sent investigation teams. Vostai continued. Ships from my own fleet, crewed by volunteers who understood the risks. Most never returned. The few that did brought back footage you need to see. The screens changed, showing grainy video from a ship's camera. Empty space where a Zaphirian military base should have been. Drifting hulks of warships, their hulls intact but their crews nowhere to be found. Silent cities on dead worlds, their streets empty but their buildings undamaged. No signs of battle, Vostai narrated. No weapons damage. No debris fields. Just emptiness where a proud civilization once lived. Where are the people? A young Talarian ambassador whispered. Gone, Vostai replied. As I warned they would be. The great doors of the chamber opened with a soft hiss. Every head turned as a figure walked down the central aisle. The being wore a simple, dark uniform and moved with calm confidence. It took a moment for the assembly to realize what they were seeing. A human. Ambassador Chen reached the central floor and stopped beside Elder Vostai. The two exchanged a brief nod of recognition. "Honored Council," Chen said, his voice carrying easily through the stunned silence. "I am Ambassador Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. I come with a message from humanity." "You," Ambassador Raktul sputtered, rising from his seat. "What have you done with the Zaphirian Empire?" "The same thing we've done with every aggressive civilization that has threatened human space," Chen replied calmly. "We defended ourselves." "Defended?" Raktul's voice cracked with anger. "You've committed genocide on a galactic scale." "No," Chen said firmly. "We've committed education." New images appeared on the screens. Pastoral worlds under alien suns, cities that looked different from anything the Council had seen before, and walking through those cities, beings that looked familiar but somehow changed. "The former Zaphirian Empire now exists as the Terran Protectorate," Chen explained. "Every Zaphirian citizen has been relocated to new worlds given new opportunities, and helped to understand why aggression leads to extinction." "You brainwashed them," Raktul accused. "We taught them," Chen corrected. "The same way we taught the Talnash, the Crimson Fleet, the Void Hunters, and 43 other species over the past 3 centuries. Aggression is a choice. It can be unchosen." "This is monstrous," another ambassador called out. "You've destroyed their culture, their identity." "We've preserved their species," Chen interrupted, his tone becoming colder. "Every Zaphirian who attacked our colonies is alive and healthy. They live in peace, contribute to society, and raise families who will never know the urge to conquer their neighbors. Tell me, Ambassador, how many species can the Zaphirian Empire make the same claim about?" The question hung in the air like poison. Everyone knew the answer. The Zaphirian Empire had been built on conquest and subjugation. Entire species had been enslaved or exterminated to feed their expansion. "You had no right," Raktul said weakly. "We had every right," Chen replied. "The right of self-defense. The right of survival. The right to ensure that our children would grow up in a galaxy where strength doesn't automatically mean the right to destroy the weak." Elder Vosatai stepped forward. "The human delegation has requested permission to address the Council formally." "Permission granted," the speaker said, though his voice shook slightly. Chen moved to the central podium. Around him, hundreds of alien faces stared with expressions ranging from fear to fascination to outright terror. "Members of the Galactic Council," he began, "humanity comes before you today to clarify our position in galactic affairs." He paused, letting his words settle. "For 3 centuries, we have watched as aggressive species spread across the galaxy like a disease. We have seen peaceful civilizations enslaved, exploited, and destroyed by those who believe that might makes right. We have tried diplomacy, negotiation, and appeals to reason. None of these approaches work with truly aggressive species. So we developed a different approach. When a species chooses aggression over cooperation, when they attack innocent civilians to prove their strength, when they mistake our restraint for weakness, they learn what happens when humanity stops being patient." The screens showed images of human space. Not the primitive backwater the galaxy had believed in, but a vast network of hidden installations, advanced shipyards, and defensive systems that spanned multiple star systems. "We are not the young species you thought you knew," Chen continued. "We are not weak, divided, or primitive. We are the galaxy's immune system, designed to prevent the spread of aggressive civilizations before they can cause irreversible damage. Every species that has attacked humanity has had a choice," he said, his voice growing harder. "They could have chosen peace, cooperation, and mutual respect. Instead, they chose violence, and violence has consequences. The Zaphirian Empire is gone," Chen stated flatly. "Its people live on, but its capacity for aggression has been permanently removed. The same fate awaits any other species that makes the same choice." He looked directly at Ambassador Raktul. "We know about the hegemony state's expansion plans. We know about the military buildup in your border systems. We know about the species you're planning to pacify next." Raktul's face went pale. Around the chamber, other ambassadors shifted uncomfortably as Chen's gaze swept over them. "Humanity offers the galaxy a simple choice," Chen concluded. "Peace or processing, cooperation or correction. The decision is yours, but the consequences are ours to enforce." He stepped back from the podium. "We will now take questions." The chamber erupted in chaos. Voices rose in dozens of languages as ambassadors argued, demanded explanations, and made threats. But underneath the noise, a new reality was settling in. The galaxy had a new apex predator, and it had been hiding among them for centuries, watching, learning, and preparing for this moment. Elder Vostai made her way slowly toward the exit, her ancient duty finally complete. She had warned them. They had ignored her. Now they would learn what happened when sleeping giants were awakened. Behind her, Ambassador Chen waited patiently for order to return. He had all the time in the universe. After all, humanity had been preparing for this conversation for 300 years. The age of unchecked aggression in the galaxy was over. The age of human oversight had begun. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, automated beacons began broadcasting a new message in every known language. Here lies the Zaphirian Empire, who forgot that predators come in many forms. Do not repeat their mistake.